Hi there, Elevated Planet community. This is John Drew here. Today I have the great privilege of interviewing Miguel Mendonca. Miguel has a background in forestry and horticulture, journalism, geography and history, social science and environment. He's worked internationally as a researcher, writer and campaigner on renewable energy before becoming an independent researcher. He then published books on a range of themes, including ETs, hybrids, disclosure, the social history of the UFO topic, wisdom, and the art of creativity. He now makes music full-time as Sokomiru and has just released his second album titled Into Galactic. Hi there, Elevated Planet community. This is John Drew here, and I'm here today privileged to be interviewing Miguel Mendonca. And as the Elevated Planet audience will be aware, I've done a bunch of Twiglet Zone, and I always offer up the opportunity for the audience to decide for themselves whether it's the truth or deluded nonsense, even though they know full well that it is my truth. But I understand also because I came from a left brain version of reality not that long ago. And a few years ago, I would have regarded it as deluded nonsense. So I fully respect people's right to look at it in that way. My progress has taken me through various pieces of research, various authors, and it's taken me quite recently to you, Miguel. I wonder if you could maybe start by telling me what your journey is through, which is taking you through, more into this extraterrestrial kind of area. How did that all come about?
In 60 seconds, I'm a lifer. I was given my first book on the topic when I was about 5 or 6 years old. So this is end of the 70s. And I had an encounter with this invisible presence. That's the only way I can say it. And I was 3 years of age at the time. And what I understood in that encounter with that presence was that there are clearly things in this world that we can perceive, but not with the physical senses. We know they're there, but we can't see them, hear them, smell them, taste them, nothing. But we know they're there, right? So clearly there are different levels, layers, aspects of reality that are able to interact, but they're not necessarily perceptible via human physical senses. And that set the course of my entire life. Having that experience and a couple of years later getting a book on UFOs and ETs, and then of course growing up with Star Wars and Star Trek and all that stuff. And I just had a lifelong feeling that I am not of this world. I cannot be the same thing as this, because this always seemed crazy to me. I always felt like a stranger in a strange land from a very early age. Why on earth would humans need weapons? Why would we need fences? Why would we need borders and boundaries? Why would we need to protect ourselves from one another? All these things are crazy to me. And I've had multiple experience with angels and ghosts. I've had near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences, the sort of lucid dreaming stuff, all kinds of things that have given me the sense that human consciousness, particularly in the West, is very boxed in by religion and science as the two great explanatory mechanisms for us dealing with this, the fact that we're conscious and conscious of all of this stimuli, all of this stuff. And there's no two people who experience it the same way, right? I mean, for every conscious entity, there is a unique version of the universe. And the way that these interact is, on this planet at least, kind of interesting. I mean, through art, it is benign or benevolent, typically, maybe not exclusively, but typically. But the way that these differing universes interact outside of art and culture tends to be, well, it depends how you define culture, but we're pretty good at fear and paranoia and distrust and bigotry and injustice and inequality and feeling this permanent sense of threat from other people, and that we're in competition with them. And of course, the entire economy builds this in. All of our sport is all about wiring into us this idea of competition. We've got to beat the other guy, and look what people will do. And at work, I mean, I've done all kinds of different jobs in different places, worked with a wide variety of humanity. Even I was an environmentalist for a decade. I could not believe the levels of hypocrisy and backbiting. And it just feels like, I don't want to curse on this thing, but we are so screwed up as beings. I mean, I can't, I'm an immediate cleanse at the moment, because what I see in the media is just sends me just bananas.
Yes.
Trying to imagine why it is that a race of beings that is this old, it's been around this long, we're not kids anymore, even though we behave that way. We should have gone through that phase. We should have understood that competition is fine up to a point. It can definitely drive innovation. It can produce a lot of great stuff, but not if it is about inequality, right? If we were competing to be as benevolent as possible, that's a competition I can make sense of in a way, even though there's maybe an internal paradox. So yeah, I just, for my whole life, I have been studying humans, living among the humans, and feeling very, very, very different. And then, of course, during the books, I had a sighting, a craft encounter in 2009, which was intense and powerful. And like most people that have had UFO encounters, it's always fun to talk about because you're still trying to make sense of it. And excuse me, there is still that intensity to the memory that you're right back there. You know, I see this thing that looks like a satellite, except that it's just getting bigger and bigger and brighter and brighter. And then it shrinks back down, carries on, then it expands again, and then just like a bullet. And these things do change you. They do stimulate so much in you that is human, connected to imagination, to problem solving, threat resolution, all of that stuff, all of the different levels and layers and structures in the brain are at work trying to make sense of the strangeness we've encountered. After that, I sunk deeply and profoundly into the research. I mean, I was a pretty experienced researcher at that point. It was a lot difficult for me to acquire data, but it never answered the question. I mean, it just doesn't. I ended up connecting with Barbara Lamb, and because I'd seen some lectures that she gave on hybrids, and I was writing a novel about this stuff to try and piece it all together, figure out what would be the big picture into which all of these disparate but interconnected pieces would fit. What is that really? What is happening here? What is this interaction about? And why does it come in so many forms? And why does it stimulate us in so many different ways? And then in that process, talking to the people who self-identify as hybrids in that first book, I was just struck by how all of it felt so familiar and close to home, and in some cases near the knuckle, to the point where I really was asking myself serious questions about, could it be possible that I'm actually not from here as a soul, if you like? And piece by piece, things kind of came together, different means of gathering information on my nature, my journey. Some were in regression that were very spontaneous. And I've told those stories in most interviews, so people can find that elsewhere. And I think it's in Meet the Hybrids. I think that what Barbara and I did towards the end of it, it was so transformative and it opened up so much that I said to her, we'll each write half a chapter on the ways in which this has affected us. And so I was sort of pulling out some of my stories. I was doing my own job of piecing together my cosmic connections, cosmic history. And at this point, it has sort of switched form. The way that I've expressed it most recently is musically. And so I'm working full-time as a musician these days. I still do, bits of writing, articles and so forth, but not books. And the last album I did is called Into Galactic. It is the story of myself getting off planet finally and back out among the stars and just playing, just having fresh adventures among the stars in a way that, like, I really understand now what the hybrids and other folks talk about when they talk about how dense it is on this planet. I feel like bit by bit, I have come to terms with the information that I have acquired through my research about not just the topic in the larger sense, and we can talk about that because there's endless facets and endless years of what it all amounts to. But really, I feel like I've come to terms with my own place in it. And just working it out through the arts, I am finding is a much more sort of pure and direct means, even though it's abstract, even though it's not concrete in terms of finding language, working with sound, working with music. It is all about emotion. It is all about how does it feel to be here? How does it feel to think about these things? So I have a couple of projects in hand musically that allow me to process things in this way. And the other work that I'm doing is with artists of all kinds. I'm doing a series of collaborations where I take images of their work and I create music videos for my channel, the Sakamaru channel, and that's my artist name, so all my music is out there. So that's my general intro.
Yeah, no, it's great, and I've been listening to the music as well from your latest album, and I can understand your journey. And it's kind of like one of those things. I think it's like with a lot of music. It's kind of, some of the stuff is very, like whether it's rock or whatever. Then you got your Floyd, where you kind of just got to sit back and let it sweep over you. And this is more like let it sweep over you kind of music, right? And creative expression, all this kind of thing. I get it. And one of the things, it's interesting because Jolie and we do these CE5 meditations every week where we are kind of reaching out and asking for guidance. And one of the things we were told is that sound and music needed to be on Elevated Planet website. It needs to be there. He said, because they said, you're not elevating anything unless you have sound and music within that. So one of the things that I've actually linked to there, and I have to thank you for this, and to Philippe as well, who did the photography, is the crop circles thing, right? The crop circles with the music. And I've actually got that on the website now. So it links into the work you're doing, but that came through very clearly.